call the meeting of the Quincy City Council Finance Committee together to order and ask the clerk to read the roll.
Counselor Andronico. Counselor Kane. Present. Counselor Devine. Present. Counselor DeBona. Present. Counselor Harris. Counselor Liang. Counselor Mahoney. Counselor McCarthy. Chairman Phelan.
Present.
8 members, you have a quorum.
Okay. Bear with me, I'm going to read the language for the open meeting law. Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and are deemed acknowledgeable and permissible. Okay, so we're going to be, first item on the agenda is 2023-017, appropriation of $1,995,000 from the Sewer and Drain Rehab Fund for seawall design and flood protection measures. We have the Commissioner of Public Works, Al Gracioso.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, City Councilors. With me this evening, Joe Shea from Granite City Partners, Tony Omobono from Tetra Tech, and Bob Parsons from Tetra Tech. Tonight, for your consideration, we're requesting roughly a $2 million transfer from the Sewer and Drain Rehab Fund, which is funded by developers in building permit fees for stormwater flooding and drainage-based efforts. Number one on the agenda is a $1 million request for the repair and reconstruction of up to 16 municipal separate storm sewer system, MS4, outfalls, which are spread throughout the city, which conveys stormwater and floodwater to the city's brooks, streams, rivers, and Quincy Bay. This effort will be discussed by Joe Shea of Granite City Partners. The number two item on the agenda is the continued advancement of the final design and construction of the Manor Ave and Babcock Street Seawall Improvement Project. Based upon a concept design, the city has been awarded a roughly $3 million assistance grant from the Mass Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs toward the reconstruction of 855 feet of seawall, including increasing the height by 2 feet with the ability to raise it another 2 feet in the future, if needed. This also includes the design of the remaining 3,088 feet of the Manor Ave seawall. The city's match for this grant is $994,095. This funding will allow the design and permitting to proceed and will fund a portion of the eventual construction. This effort will be discussed by Tony Omobono from the engineering firm of Tetra Tech. Once the engineers go through their technical elements of the request, we will entertain questions about the transfer request. Joe, do you want to go to the slides? So the first slide you see is just an overview of Quincy's significant water quality assets. It lists all our sewer collection system and our drainage system. I think you've all seen this before. We've gone over this in the discussions we've had on the consent decree. So the repair and reconstruction of up to 16 MS4 outfalls, $875,000 will go to contractor material costs, and the other $175,000 for the engineering and permitting. For the continual final design of the portion of construction of the Manor Ave and Babcock Street wall improvements, $955,000, again, is a transfer as the city's 25% match for the EOEEA grant. And the other $2.982 million is the grant itself. Total project funding, $3,937,285. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Shea.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I'm Joseph Shea with Granite City Partners, an engineering and real estate consulting firm here in the city. Thank you for having me tonight, councilors. I'm going to speak about the first portion of this request, being the outfalls and their need for repair. A lot of what I'm going to say tonight stems from our January 9th update on the EPA's consent decree with the city of Quincy. The city has tremendous drainage and stormwater assets, as the commissioner had explained, and we annually do updates to each of those assets. As the council body knows, you often do omnibus approvals for infrastructure improvements such as multi-year roadway or multi-year water main improvements, yet drainage improvements and sewer improvements often come to you on a year-by-year cycle based upon the work of the previous year. The outfall work that we have before you tonight for funding is driven by the work that we've done in the past year associated with the consent decree. The complete drainage system has been mapped. There's been an illicit detection and elimination program. Each of the 188 outfalls, as I've explained a few times, have been visited multiple times. They've been mapped, canvassed, assessed, and we've identified 16 that we feel are the highest priorities to repair this year. And that outfall program will continue throughout the coming years, where each year the city does systematic, programmatic improvements. We've been using the new technology that was explained on January 9th, the city's GIS system. The GIS system is not new, yet the city work platform for GIS management is new, that maps all of the outfalls. So 16 of these circles on the map are outfalls that we are recommending be repaired. Each of the outfalls has its own screen for monitoring, so that we, in real time and with field-based tools, can track the outfall's operation, whether it needs to be dug out, whether the sampling of that outfall is meeting the various federal requirements. And slide 9 in your package is the list of the 16 outfalls that we've identified. Some of these outfalls have deteriorated concrete. Some of these outfalls we need to clear and work with the Norfolk County Mosquito Control to make sure that the finger trenches work so that they flow properly. Several of these outfalls have just fallen into a point of disrepair where they hold water, which then becomes stagnant, which then causes bacteria to grow, which then causes an issue with the city's water quality. So we will be releasing or adjusting the outfalls so that the water can be released back out into the ocean. I won't go through this list in detail. It touches every ward within the city. And the request for these repairs is $1 million of the transfer from the sewer and drain rehabilitation account. The second half of the request, as the commissioner had explained, is to initiate work on the Manet Ave and Babcock Street seawall improvements. In 2012, the city did a citywide seawall assessment report, and the city has programmatically moved through a number of the recommendations in that report. We're now at the point where Manet Ave and Babcock Street is the next recommendation. Tetra Tech did a basis of design report in November of 2022. That's on the city's website for anybody who would like to read the details. And in that report, Tony will get into the details about the seawall work. It also includes an additional 7 MS4 outfalls to be addressed during the seawall project. So tonight, although I've presented 16 outfalls, there's actually 23 to be addressed. When we speak to the US EPA about our progress, we'll be talking about the 23. With that, I'll hand the presentation over to Tony Omobono to talk about the seawall.
Thank you, Joe. Mr. Chairman, councilors, thank you for having me here tonight. Again, my name is Tony Omobono. I'm with an engineering firm by the name of Tetra Tech. Tetra Tech is a consulting and engineering company that's international, but primarily nationally based, with 14 offices just in New England alone. We have about 500 employees in the New England area, so we have a lot of resources to be able to assist the city in many ways. I'm just going to go over some of the high-level topics on the seawall project itself and explain where we are in the process, and then show some examples of what's out there presently and how we intend to get through the design to ultimately come up with solutions. So from the engineering and permitting perspective, the overall project is really a coastal protection project. It's really to help protect the resources of the city, particularly along the Manat Ave area for this project, from changing coastal conditions, be it sea level rise, storm surge, more intense rainfalls. The objective of the initial phase of the project is really to get to a 25 to 30% design stage, so that then we can provide an engineer's estimate at that point of what the overall project would likely cost. Ultimately, we'll get to final design and actually go out to bid for costs to get hard construction costs for the wall project. Initial tasks will include survey and geotechnical investigations along the wall, so that we can get the technical information that's needed in order to develop the construction plans. It's our intent to recommend wall types that primarily match existing conditions while making improvements, and I'll show you some examples of that in a few minutes. The types of wall that are out there right now consist of precast concrete block sections, cast-in-place sections, and then some revetment or riprap stone that's been placed in sections where it makes sense based on topography or the lay of the land to be able to use that type of construction. And as Joe mentioned, the intent is to also address the MS4 outfalls that are along the stretch of that segment of the seawall. So where we are today in the design and permitting approach, as Joe mentioned, we completed the basis of design report last year, which really kind of sets the objectives and looks at the conditions of what we anticipate encountering as we enter into the design phase. The preliminary design, which will get us to that 25 to 30% stage, is anticipated to last 3 to 4 months. We should be done with that sometime June of this year. The final design and permitting, which follows the preliminary design, should take anywhere from a year to a year and a half, and we expect that to be done somewhere at the end of next year. At that point, we'll go out to bid, obtain costs so that the city will have hard bids to really determine what the construction cost of the wall would be. That process is about 3 months long, 2 to 3 months, depending upon the timing for getting the advertisements out, answering any questions, and then allowing contractors enough time to actually bid the project. So that's anticipated to be complete somewhere around March of 2025. And then construction, we anticipate somewhere between 12 and 18 months as we sit here today. So the total project should be complete and constructed around the end of 2026. So I'm sure you're all familiar with the extent of the seawall section that we're talking about, but it really extends from Babcock Street to Perry Beach, or from Perry Beach to Babcock Street. Overall, it's about 3,800 feet in length. And this gives you a few examples of the different types of wall sections that are out there now, and to some degree, the state of current condition. So top left is a precast section of walls that have been placed. In some cases, they look like Jersey barriers. Then you look to the middle of the top row and the right of the top row. That's some examples of cast-in-place concrete that's been in place for some time. You can see varying degrees of degradation of those sections of wall. The bottom two photos show an example to the left of where revetment and some precast sections are in place. And then again, to the right, you see a combination of some revetment stone or some heavy riprap stone and some precast sections. So it's our intent to make sure that we take advantage of the existing topography out there and use revetment stone when we can, of course, tying the segments of new wall into that embankment on either end so that we protect the resources and the properties behind it. So in summary, the focus of our design will be to really recommend various sections depending upon the needs of the reaches that are there now to repair and to increase the height. But we'll do it in an adaptive way so that we're not overbuilding the wall. But we also want to make sure that the foundation is designed so that if the wall has to be increased over time, that the infrastructure is there to be able to do that. We want to make sure that for the life expectancy of the wall, the city has the ability to adapt to increasing conditions. What's important to the process for both us and the city, I believe, is that we will maintain contact and communication throughout the course of the design process. And it's our intent, as directed and suggested by the commissioner, is that this become a very interactive process with the residents as well. We know there are a number of properties impacted by this project, and we fully intend to coordinate and collaborate with the residents in the area. So at this point, I'll turn it back over to the commissioner.
We're open for questions.
Counselor Yang.
Good evening, Commissioner. I just have a couple of questions for you, if you could. So regarding the request here in front of us, it's asking for the sum to be moved to a capital improvement fund account for this work. Do we already have an account established for the work that you've all been working on up until this point? Or is this a new account to be going into?
This would be a new account,
Okay.
I believe. I'll have to double check with Eric on that, but I believe it's a new account.
It was just more a curiosity as far as logistics go, because again, I know you've been, you and your team have been working on this, this kind of work across the city for quite some time. And so I was just wondering if it was something that was ongoing and we're adding to it to continue the work, or if this is just project-based and it's going to go into a fund dedicated just to this work and then closed afterwards.
This particular investment would go into a special fund for this phase of the project.
Great, okay. And then do we know, I don't know if this would be to you or to the auditor, but the funds are going to be coming out of the sewer and drainage rehab fund, where again, that fund is populated by, like you said, developers and permitting fees. So do we know how much is in there right now?
Yeah, I believe there's 4.9, I have it written somewhere, 4.9 million, like 987, almost just under 5 million.
All right, and then do we have to spend down whatever's in that account per fiscal year? So let's say there's $5 million left in that account, so it'll carry over into the next fiscal year and onwards?
That fund continually gets changed on a monthly basis as developers do projects throughout the city and people pull building permits. That fund gets populated.
Okay, I just didn't remember if it was like if you don't use it, you lose it kind of a situation. And it's like, well, if we have $5 million to spend in 3 months, spend away. And then the last question I had is not so much a question as much as a recommendation or an ask to work that I know that you're already doing, but if I could just reiterate for communications. In one of the slides, it was slide number 15, the last couple of bullet points had talked about close coordination with residents and abutters about the work, and I just wanted to make sure, and you do this all the time, I get newsletters from your department where it's translated into multiple languages, and so I would just reiterate that ask and make sure that you continue that for these kinds of notices as well. And then the second, or the last bullet point there talks about including progress reports along the way. We had talked about putting all of the work that your department does up on the city's website so that folks can track along all of the progress that you're making. So the updates around this project, is that something that could be accessible online that we could post and people can go there to look for updates instead of just picking up the phone and calling you? If they wanted to, they could just go online and look at it.
Yes, we direct everything to Council McCarthy on this project.
Perfect. Thanks, Counselor. That was, again, it was just more logistic stuff. I know, again, you have an incredible track record for fiscal responsibility, and so I have no doubt that this money is going to be put to good use, and that before you even brought it in front of us, you yourself, along with your team, I'm sure, have done your due diligence, and I say that with confidence, again, based off of your, frankly, immaculate track record. And I just guess we'll close, Mr. Chairman, with just saying thank you. You got a $3 million grant, essentially, to support this work. And that's state funding that could have gone to other communities, but you brought that $3 million here for this work. And so really just, again, wrapping up my comments by extending a thank you for doing that.
And part of this project also is we are continuing to chase other grants, including federal FEMA grants for seawalls and dams, bridges, seawalls. So working with Tetra Tech, we'll be chasing more money.
Yeah, I mean, again, just given your track record, you don't leave any stone unturned when it comes to getting grant funding and to support all the work you do. So thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Counsel Mahoney.
Thank you. As usual, Councilor Yang asked some questions, so that's helpful, because, you know, and I appreciate that, Councilor Yang. I have a similar question about the money that was in the fund. So we'll have about $3 million left over. What other projects do you anticipate that we'd be using those for? And then how often, I mean, what's the average? Do we know what the average of how we build that back up? I know it's $1,000 per, or that it's 100 for every 100,000. Actually, maybe we could ask Ms. Susan O'Connor to explain that, just so we understand how that fund works for the construction.
Yes, Counselor. So the contributions that go into that fund are made by the applicants for building permits. And it can be from new construction, from repairs, anybody that pulls a building permit. The money, it's a percentage. I'm not sure if it's like maybe $12 out of 1,000 goes into this particular fund. And then the fund can be used for any soil rehabilitation projects that come before us. And it needs council approval to spend out of that account. Actually, when you vote on it, the money will go into either an account within the DPW, or maybe if it's a capital project, they might set up a special fund and they'll spend out of that. Whatever is not used, like Al said, there's almost $5 million in the account right now. Whatever is not used will stay in that fund for whatever length of time and will continue to grow. I believe last year, maybe, there was about $2.1 million in revenues that we received from that account. And I know this year we have received over $1 million so far.
Okay.
Just a few examples. In the last few years, we've done, I think the city used $1 million out of that for the Butler Pond drainage project. Before that, we had the Town Brook project over Bigelow Street. We rebuilt part of the Town Brook. All that money came out of that fund, so we didn't have to go for capital funds for those projects.
And that's great. And that was going to be my next question, so you kind of read my mind. I knew that we have used some of it, but I couldn't remember where. So it's good to know that we have $3 million as well left in that account. But could we just talk about just the first part, which is the 16 outfall inspections in the WebMat? So is that I think you said you're working on 16 of them, correct?
16, correct.
Is that, and that was identified in the DEP? Is that why we're doing those ones?
Well, part of the consent decree is we constantly have to look at our drainage, our outfall pipes, wet and dry water testing, and all those things. So once again, if we have an issue with one of those pipes, like Joe mentioned, it creates bacteria and pollution, and we have to fix it. And
So are these the 16 of the worst that we have? Or are there more that we're going to have to do? I'm just curious to know, is there, I mean, I'm sure there's more. I don't want to suggest, but I just want to make sure that this is the start of, I don't know if it's a Joe that you want to answer, but it's the start of maybe fixing some of these problems that we've had, but this is going to be an ongoing type of thing. But you can't do them all at once, obviously, so you have to prioritize.
That's exactly correct, and that with the 188 outfalls that the city has and has assessed, a prioritization has been created. These are the first bite of that prioritization.
So these are the 16 worst
These
that
are
we
the
think we have?
16 that we've recommended. Every year, we will continue to make incremental improvements in these pieces of infrastructure. Some years, it will just be maintenance. It wouldn't be a capital transfer.
Okay.
It'll be cleaning out the trenches, enhanced maintenance would be the term, but these are the 16 we've recommended this year.
And of these 16, these will be the ones that we report back to the DEP, making sure that they see that we're making, not incremental, but we're actually making large changes to these things to be able to fix
is
these.
correct.
And then with the plan with the other 188, prioritizing them as we go. And potentially, there could be ones that pop up, what we identify this year, next year, you could have 2 more that pop up that become more of a
That is
critical.
correct,
Because you're constantly watching them, correct?
We are constantly monitoring them now. Every year, we will visit all 188 to assess them.
Okay. That's great. So one of the questions I have for the Furnace Ave Brook, where is that part of the Furnace Brook work you're doing down on Furnace Brook? Is that that area, or?
No, this is separate. You can talk to that.
The one on Furnace Avenue at the brook is actually
Furnace Ave.
between Cross and Furnace Avenue. It's an outfall into what was once a wetland,
Okay.
and then an overflow into the brook.
Okay, so it's just an overflow area. I wasn't sure if it was like near the work that you're already doing, so I wasn't sure if that was.
No,
I think I actually know where it is now.
Not part of the Furnace Brook Flood and Habitat Restoration Project.
Yeah, and I think I was reading Furnace Ave, but not thinking Furnace Brook, so I was thinking the other project. And then when we get to the seawall, thank you very much, that was very helpful. I think when we get to the seawall too, I think Manette and Babcock, and I understand Council McCarthy will have some challenges, because that's one of the things that we talked about, and I'm not sure how that got rectified, but some of that is private property and public property, is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, and that's,
We'll be reviewing all of that.
yeah, okay. So, and that's even more so than in the past. I know you guys do a great job communicating, and I can see why it's Council McCarthy, because it's going to be a tricky, I'm sure hopefully everybody's on board with it, but the plans, you'll be doing the plans, and everybody will be kept appraised of what the plans are.
Yeah, we'll have multiple community meetings. Part of the permitting process under the Chapter 91 permitting, you have to get sign-offs by each resident along that. So it's very much, the residents are very much involved.
Is that a common thing in communities where those seawalls are part of people's, I'm not sure, is that just, because I know that we have multiple different seawalls throughout the city, and then some of them are private, some of them are public. Is that something we run into? Not a con, yeah. I just know it's a challenge. But it's definitely something that has to be addressed, but, and I know that they're going to be concerned about, the way it's going to look. That's going to be a challenge. So it's not an easy job by no means, but, and when we're looking at this, I realize that this is, it's being funded by this rehabilitation account and also the grant, but, when we're looking at that, do we think it's going to be, I'm not trying to hold you to an amount, but, when you're looking at something like this, we're several years out before we're going to be able to get that hard cost. Do we have, how much was the last seawall that we repaired? Do we have any kind of comparisons that we can do for that? Just curious.
I'm sorry, the question?
Basically, this is just for the permitting and the engineering and the design work, so
In some construction, I believe, correct?
there's some construction that will be there. But for the most part, the hard permitting won't happen until 2025-ish?
Yeah, but the first section, I believe, is that first 800 feet that we will, what's the timeline on that?
So actually, the permitting will.
Sorry.
So to a large degree, the permitting and design will go hand in hand. So the permitting will be, the applications will be prepared, and then when we reach final design, then the plans can be the plans will accompany the permit applications to the agency. So we'll be doing some of the permitting right along, and that will happen within the next year. So certainly, the permitting will be started as part of the preliminary design phase, but then we'll continue to advance right through final design. So
But the cost, we won't know the cost, though, until, we won't be putting this out to bid until,
part of the preliminary design, when we're done with that, we'll have a 30% design estimate. That's an
Okay.
engineer's estimate, so we'll have a preliminary high-level cost estimate, but really the objective would be to get two final designs so we could get those contractor hard bids
okay.
on the pricing. But there'll be some level of estimate done as part of the preliminary engineering.
And there's the hope then, is that where you're hoping that the FEMA, that you'll be able to get some FEMA money for that, is to offset these
FEMA
costs?
and other available funding that's out there, yes.
Okay. All right. And there's no chance, I know, there's still COVID money over at Norfolk County. Is there any chance that we could use any of that COVID
We're
money?
not
for the-
going to leave any stone unturned.
I
looking
like
for
to
that
say
money.
COVID every time I can up here because I feel as though there's been a lot of money spent on the city of Quincy, but not for the projects I think that are desperately needed, and these are some of them. So I keep saying it, so please forgive me. I just know there's money there, and if we don't use it, that's a don't use it, lose it type of situation. But thank you very much. I do appreciate it. I know that this is I know that there's work on the other side of the city. I know Councilor Harris was hoping that some of his work would be included in this package too. It's kind of, but I believe that it will come hopefully sooner rather than later. But I know that this has been something that's been in need for a long time in Ward 1 as well. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening,
Good evening,
Mr. Commissioner, and we're off and running. Just FYI, on a couple of comments from Councilor Mahoney. We ended up in a few backyards along C Street going up at certain points in that first stretch in Phase 1, which was handled very well by yourself, by the contractors, informing the abutters. But, you're going to have a different scenario here on Manor Ave because you're across the street, and a lot of the folks have some private property and some of them don't. So as we go along, go house to house like we did the last time when we get there, we'll work with all the neighbors and figure it out. The wall also is a little different because this first phase that's in front of us is the low section down by the Willows. It says from the House Neck Rock up a certain amount of feet, where Manor, has an incline, and that first part's low, and the other end at Bayswater, down at Brinsley and Orleans, down below Manor, there's houses that the wall's ancient. If we thought we ran into old sections on the first round all the way up to Chickatawba, at the wall that's down there from Bayswater to the corner where it jumps back up to Manor Ave, it elevates from the Brinsley, Orleans area. It's in dire need of this. I don't know how many outfalls we did on C Street. I think there were 22 that we repaired and increased the size of the pipe. The pipes that were there 7,500 years ago were very small, and most of them were crushed, and quite an improvement down there. When we do get a storm, we don't want another storm like 2018, but when we do get a storm, the water always comes over, regardless of the height, with the splash and the rain and the surge. But the drainage that's on C Street now really has improved that whole area. And a big thing is those outfall pipes that we're going to address.
One of the beauties of the seawall design was we built drainage right into the seawall. So including our seawalls, our drainage outfalls that are already there, but now the seawall has drainage outfalls within
Right.
it. So I think
And-
it's a great,
I put a little article out in the House Neck Bulletin that a lot of folks read about this first part, that this was the first stage down by the Willows, and that the design and the rest of the examination of the wall would take place down to Bayswater later on. I know that if anybody's watching, they'll be very excited to know that we're back on this. I didn't know if we were going to get back on this horse as quick as we did, because that was a giant undertaking, Al, that you took on with the Paul and Joe Casserly and everybody involved all the way up to Chickatawba. And now to go the other way is just a big plus for House Neck. I know they'll be excited. I know I'll get a few phone calls. I want to go first because I'm in a low end or whatever, but I know we'll all work out. So this is great that we're back on this, and I couldn't be happier.
We did some some in-house repairs down at Brinsley. We walked that wall, the mayor walked that wall with the neighbors. You know, it was really bad down there. So we get in there and did what we could do, the best we could do as a temporary fix until we can get this thing going. Try to
Yeah.
help a little bit.
And as you said, there'll be plenty of community meetings and even one-on-ones with the abutters as you go up Manette down towards Bayswater when we get to that point down the road. So thank you very much. Thank
you,
you,
Counselor.
Tony, company, and Joe. Thank you.
Council DeBona,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Happy to see that these outfalls are across the city, anywhere where the shorelines are. I see some, one of them here on Avalon Ave, and you got Airport Road and Cove Way and some areas of Germantown and all across Wallaston Beach here. It's really good to see that throughout the areas. I know we always go through getting everything in order before any type of storms and stuff, so this will be a great addition to it. Some of the questions about, that I have kind of go upon the seawalls. I know we're in the seawall design and flood protection measures for the 1.9, but as we move forward, just a little bit about the seawalls in general. When you do if this is approved and you do the construction, are you going to keep the existing seawall there and build right behind it, more towards the street? Or are you going to take the seawall out and then put the new seawall in at the same
Take it out,
spot?
but
Are you going in the same spot, or are you moving it maybe 2 feet towards the street? Where is this going to be?
It would be the same spot. I believe.
Same spot.
Yeah. Tony, you want to?
So they're going to go exactly where the seawall is existing right now? Same spot?
Same
So you're
spot.
going to take it out, and then you're going to put it right back in? Okay. When you do that, are you bringing in the precasts that are already pre-made, where they're already, the walls, or are you going to build them while you're there?
No, they're precast.
They're precast. So you're going to bring them in, transport them in, slap them in,
Yes,
and then,
if we use all precast, right, Tony?
all precast, and then? Depend on the location. So each location is going to be a little different depending on where it is? Does it depend on height, or does it depend on, what would be the,
Depends on what's there. Tony, you want to?
yeah?
So it really does depend on what's there existing, but it also depends on what are the conditions that we find there. So from a geotechnical or ground perspective, what is needed in order to raise the wall or put the wall into to the height that it needs to be? So in some cases, precast may make sense. In other cases, cast in place would be more cost-effective.
Okay.
So it really is, that's what we look towards, or look to clarify during the preliminary design process. So when that preliminary design is done, we'll have very discrete segments of what type of wall goes where. And so it'll be, in some cases, a mix of precast along a certain length, cast in place along a certain length, and where we can use the existing topography, there'll be revetment. So it doesn't necessarily need a wall, it just needs armor stone to keep that slope stable.
How long will these seawalls last? Is it 100 years? Is it 80 years? What is the
It's a
durability? What's the life
A minimum
of
of
it?
50-year
50
design
years.
life. And then it really does depend, our approach is going to be to design the foundations for whether it's precast, cast in place, or revetment.
Okay.
To be able to prolong that life beyond its expectancy, and also to be able to adjust to changing sea level as the decades progress.
So do you have a maintenance, I guess, once that's in, the seawall is in, do you have a maintenance phase where you can get a lot longer durability with it by just, if you see some cracks in it, go out and fix some of the cracks?
If
Or
that's necessary, but the objective would be to have those pieces in place so that at least for its design life, you really shouldn't have to
do
maintain
that?
it.
Okay. I know during the meetings over the last few years, I've attended some with Council McCarthy. In some particular areas of the seawall, or some areas of, I guess I could say, residents, they talked about possibly having an extension down the road of 2 feet. So for instance, if you put the seawall in and you wanted to come back some years later and said, you know what, the water level is just rising a little bit too much, we have to put some in this particular area. Do you have it set up like that, where you can add, I guess, height?
That's right.
Okay.
That's the objective.
What's the most height that you can add? Is it 2 feet, or what's going to be?
So the intent originally will be to raise it by 2 feet,
2 feet.
but we'll also make accommodations for up to an additional 4 feet of
4 feet,
extension,
okay, so
if necessary.
additional
We
4
don't-
feet if
We
needed.
don't really expect it to go to that,
Sure.
but we want to make sure that if it had to, it could.
I know a lot of folks that live on the water there, they're looking for, obviously, they want to be able to see
Absolutely.
out the windows, but at the same time, there are areas that if the water gets over, and it's just a particular area, as we know, is if it gets over, we got to get it back, the water back out. So just for purposes of down the road, an evolution of time, I guess if the water raises, or water rises, there's going to be areas where you might have to do the extensions down the road.
And that would be subject to further
Evaluation,
evaluation
right.
at that time. And it really is a matter of protecting the city's investment initially. And what we would not want to have is that we put a wall in at a certain height and come 10 years later, it's determined that it has to be another foot,
Mm-hmm.
18 inches or 2 feet, and the foundation just wasn't there to do that. So we want to prevent that from happening.
I see, so you'll have the foundation for it in place. I mean, we talk about it all the time with all the different construction in the city. Make sure you do it the first time right.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
Think about the future.
I think about the future and down the road, and you never know. And I know a lot of folks, it was split. A lot of Council McCarthy's, some of them wanted to raise it even more to 4 feet. Some of them wanted to do nothing, and some of them said, we'll compromise at 2 feet. So everything is going to get 2 feet. Is that correct?
That's kind of the baseline condition, right?
I mean, it's just good to have that option of down the road, 20 years down the road, 30 years down the road, if you have to go back and add the extension at certain areas of the wall.
Right.
So I think this is an important project. I know, I don't live on the exact shoreline, but I live off a street that starts this whole thing on Chickatobit. So starting from Marymount all the way down to, we're looking at Manor Ave all the way down. I was just talking to Council McCarthy just a second ago. That's Frank McCauley's house right there on Manor Ave. You're going to go right toward that, right to that point here in this phase. So he kind of looked at me and laughed. So, but anyways, I thank you for your time to come in here tonight, and I'm looking forward to this project to move the city forward in the right direction. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Any other councilors? Council Devine.
This is directed to Commissioner Grazioso. The Furnace Ave at Brook, that's in the low-lying area behind the National Grid station, is that the one?
Yes.
And it's, does that let Brook water come out into that area? Is that what an outflow means, MS4 outflow?
The outfalls, I don't know if there's an outfall in that area. Joe, you might know better than I. Is it on the list?
There is, once was a retention pond there, so an outfall is where water comes out of, it flows into
Okay.
a water body, so there.
You said something about water standing there and stuff like that on some of these.
Furnace Brook in that area was actually designed to feed a wetland.
I know the area well, yes, yeah.
Maybe familiar with it?
I am, yeah.
And that pipe is in disrepair.
Okay.
and
So
we'd
I'm
like to
sure
repair
that, that's great, because there's been a lot of issues in that area. So that if that's not working properly, it'd be nice to see that fixed. I'm glad it's on the list.
Yes.
And then while I have you for 1 second with the commissioner, I'd just like to let you know how a lot of my constituents on Cross and Miller, they speak highly of how every time there's a rainstorm coming, DPW trucks come in and they clean out certain areas that are notorious for catching some of the state's trees that fall in from the rotary. So you guys do an exceptional job, and it is recognized quite often by these neighbors, because as soon as we see your trucks pull up and cleaning out those catch basins, we know there's a storm coming. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor.
At this time, the chair will take a moment of privilege to just ask a couple questions and make a comment. On the outfalls, seeing you got Langley Circle in Thornton and Brook Meadow. Now, are those tied in with the work we recently did down on Sims Road and Perry Road? Is that where those are outfalling?
I believe Langley Circle, that's the work we did, Joe, at the end of Sims. We actually fixed the tide gate over there. And want to talk on that one?
They are, through you, Mr. Chairman, they are related. On Langley Circle, the Sims Road project included repairing the tide gate that's down in a chamber on Langley Circle, almost all the way down before the road curves at the marsh.
Okay.
The pipe between the marsh and that outfall continues to clog up and falls into disrepair, so we're going to change the pipe type to make that a more durable discharge point. So the Sims Road project did include stormwater infrastructure. It was the tide gate repair.
Right.
This is now the pipe with respect to
Okay,
Langley
this is the
Circle.
pipe going underneath. So it's just, is it the pipe just down by there? Or are we going all the way back to the neighborhood?
No, it's just the pipe at the end of Langley Circle. All the way back to the neighborhood was addressed in the Sims Road project.
Okay.
Thornton, you mentioned Thornton Street at Meadowbrook. It's outfall 12305. That pipe needs to be cleaned, and the finger trenches often clog there. So we're going to work with Norfolk County Mosquito Control to armor the outfall so that growth doesn't cause it to basically backfill and then hold water.
Yeah, that whole area, because of those, the old mosquito ditches.
That's
as
correct,
they
the
used to
finger
call 'em.
trenches, yes,
So sometimes they need to be cleaned out.
they do.
And, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And just one comment. Next comment on the sewer rehab fund, because I voted for it back in 1990, and I think it was a great, I see the way you're using it, and I can say that was the intent of the city council when we voted this. It was for we have a lot of drainage and flood control problems, and that's exactly what the fund was meant for. So, every once in a while, I love to see things that I did years ago and say, hey, you were a little smart when you did that one, but then other things I can deny, you know? But thank you, Commissioner, thank you for bringing your people a great report and a great update, and get as much grant money as you can, so we don't have to put it on the tax rate. We got a motion from Council McCarthy for a positive recommendation out of committee, seconded by Council Harris. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Hearing none. We'll close that part of the meeting, close the meeting of the Quincy City Council Finance Board.
I would like to call this meeting to order, the regular scheduled Quincy City Council meeting, Monday, April 3rd, 2023. It is now 7:30 PM. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Andronico. Present. Counselor Kane. Present. Counselor Devine. Present. Counselor Harris. Present. Counselor Liang. Present. Counselor Mahoney. Present. Counselor McCarthy.
Present.
Counselor Phelan.
Present.
President DeBona.
Present.
9 members.
9 members, we have a quorum. Madam Clerk, please, actually, moment of silence, please, if you can stand if you can. It's a moment of silence, please use it as you wish. Please turn to the flag. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now, Madam Clerk, please read the open meeting law.
Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible.
Madam Clerk, first item on the agenda.
First item on the agenda is 2023-032, in order for a nomination for Park and Recreation Board appointments.
I'd like to recognize Counselor Phelan.
Through you, Mr. President, I'd like to open the nominations with 3 names: Paul Begoli, Kevin Isdale, and Thomas Lester.
Is there any other nominations? Seeing none,
Motion to close nominations.
motion to close the nominations, seconded by Counselor McCarthy. All those in favor? Go right ahead.
I'm in favor of this. I know Paul is from the school committee, correct? And I know Kevin Esdale has been there for a while. How long have they been on the Park Recreation? Just all 3, just out of curiosity. Do we know?
I believe around 2 to 3 years.
It's a
Kevin
two-year
Insdale and
term.
Thomas Lester, right around 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, 2 year, well, it was a 2-year term, so it's.
So this is
you
their
do it every
second.
2 years. So all being redone.
No, I know they're all being redone. I was just wondering how many terms they had been on, just,
I
and I
don't-
think Paul's been on for a while.
Paul's been on for a while.
It's been
I
on a
know
long
that.
time.
Thank
He's
you.
the- he's
I
the
don't know if-
School committee as we.
Yeah, I
we
think,
know.
but even before he's on the school committee, I think he was on the,
He's been on ever since. He hasn't
Yeah.
left, so.
yeah.
Mr. President, would
Yes.
Chris Walker know?
I'd like to recognize Mr. Walker from the mayor's office.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Esdale's been on for 4 years, and Mr. Lester, I believe, is roughly the same, if not a little bit longer. And to my knowledge, these are annual appointments, Councilman.
Okay. I answer your questions? So nominations, all those in favor say aye? Aye. Any opposed? That's for the nominations. Nominations are closed. I'd like to recognize Counselor Phelan. If you'd like to make the motion to nominate the three, or?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to nominate all three.
All three will be Paul Bergoli from the school committee, Kevin Insdale, and Thomas Lester. Do I have a second? Seconded by Counsel McCarthy. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Andronico. Yes. Counselor Kane. Yes. Counselor Devine. Yes. Counselor Harris. Yes. Counselor Liang. Yes. Counselor Mahoney. Yes. Counselor McCarthy.
Yes.
Counselor Phelan.
Yes.
President DeBona.
Yes.
9 members.
9 members, unanimous, motion carries. Next item on the agenda, Madam Clerk.
Number 2, 2023-033, a gift for $120 for various donors for DARE.
Motion to approve made by Counselor Harris. And give him a letter of recommendation. Okay, and give him a letter saying thank you. Do I have a second? Seconded by Counselor Kane. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Andronico. Yes. Counselor Kane. Yes. Counselor Devine. Yes. Counselor Harris. Yes. Counselor Liang. Yes. Counselor Mahoney. Yes. Counselor McCarthy. Yes. Counselor Phelan.
Yes.
President DeBona.
Yes.
9 members.
9 members in the affirmative, motion carries. Next item on the agenda, Madam Clerk.
Number 3, 2023-034, a gift for $135 from Sen Wan Lee for Deer Camp.
Motion to approve made by Counselor Harris, seconded by Counselor Phelan. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk. Oh, and we'll also send a letter thanking from Counselor Harris. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Andronico. Yes. Counselor Kane. Yes. Counselor Devine. Yes. Counselor Harris. Yes. Counselor Liang. Yes. Counselor Mahoney. Yes. Counselor McCarthy.
Yes.
Counselor Phelan.
Yes.
President DeBona.
Yes.
9 members.
9 members in the affirmative, motion carries. That completes our agenda items for tonight. So we're moving on to approval of previous meeting minutes of March 20th, 2023. Motion to approve made by Counselor McCarthy, seconded by Counselor Phelan. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Ayes have it. That is a vote. Communication and reports from the mayor, other city officers, and city boards. Madam Clerk, do we have any utilities tonight?
No, sir.
No.
Not that I'm aware of.
No,
Okay,
we're gonna hold it.
okay.
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. I do have one.
I thought so.
This is a utility request to refer to Public Works Committee for schedule and advertising, grant a location, National Grid, at 389 Granite Street. Thank you.
There you go. Any other counselors? Unfinished business and preceding meeting. Reports of committees. I'd like to recognize Chairman Phelan of the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. Earlier tonight, the Finance Committee held a meeting on appropriations for sewer drainage, from the sewer drainage rehab fund on seawalls and flood protection measures. And we got a presentation from the DPW, from the commissioner, and the engineers that were involved in designing this. And there was a positive recommendation from committee, a unanimous recommendation from committee that this passed before the floor. So I would like to, right now, make a motion to pass item number 2023 2017, appropriation of $1,995,000 for the sewer water, from the sewer water fund for seawall design and flood protection measures.
Motion made by Counselor Phelan to approve this appropriation of 1.995. I have a seconded by Counselor McCarthy. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Andronico. Yes. Counselor Kane. Yes. Counselor Devine. Yes. Counselor Harris.
Yes.
Counselor Liang. Yes. Counselor Mahoney. Yes. Counselor McCarthy.
Yes.
Counselor Phelan.
Yes.
President DeBona.
Yes.
9 members.
9 members in the affirmative. Motion carries. Any other reports of committees? Seeing none. Presentation of petitions, memorials, and remonstrance. I'd like to recognize Counselor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today, I attended a longtime friend's funeral, Bob Flash of Housneck, Flaherty. Flash was 76, and he was quite a guy. He worked here at City Hall in the mailroom for a bit. His wife, Jeannie Gibbons Flaherty, has worked over at the cemetery department at Mount Wollaston for years, and the Gibbons family, they've been first responders, teachers, involved in Quincy all their lives. Bob was a Vietnam vet. He was a corporal in the U.S. Marines. His brother, Joe Flaherty, did the eulogy today, did a great job. Talking about a lot of Housneck stories that I won't mention, but they had a wonderful, wonderful life together, the Flahertys, the Gibbonses, and Bob was a true man of faith. I'd see him often at Most Blessed Sacrament with Jeannie, and just a wonderful guy. We're going to miss him. It was very sudden, which is always a shock, but he'll be missed. It was a wonderful send-off and celebration of life today, and just my prayers and thoughts, I hope, with everybody else, goes out to the Flaherty family and the Gibbons family. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other counselors? I'd like to recognize Counselor Yang.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to acknowledge that Passover starts this Wednesday, and then Easter is Sunday. And so just to all the residents out there, whoever is celebrating either or both, that they enjoy their respective holidays. Thank you.
Any other counselors? I'd like to send regrets to the McMacken family for Leonard that just passed away March 28th of 2023. He was 66 years old. Len was a veteran who served in the United States Navy. He was a union printer and was employed by the Department of Public Works here in Quincy. Len was an avid biker who spent a lot of free time volunteering in Quincy. Len is survived by 4 siblings, Linda Smith and her husband Brian, Gail Prince and her husband William, Elaine McMacken and his twin, William McMacken. He was a proud uncle of 6 nieces and nephews and 6 great nieces and nephews. Tonight was his visiting hours at the Sullivan Funeral Home. 4 to 7 was in Hanover. Please, if you can, keep the McMacken thoughts and prayers to their family. Any other counselors? Oh, go right ahead, recognize Councilor
One more
McCarthy.
I wanted to mention was the passing of John Delory. John was a longtime custodian with Quincy Public Schools, 78 years old. He had had a very back and forth bout with COVID and pneumonia for a while, but he was a great guy who always gave me his opinion, especially during negotiations. We're going to miss him, so God bless John.
Was that on the school committee or was that?
Yeah, school
committee. Okay. Funny. Any other counselors? Seeing none, moving on to motion, orders, and resolutions. Scheduling of committee meetings and public hearings. Any of the counselors have anything coming in here yet? You have a little bit of time, so we're not going to be meeting again for 3 weeks, okay? Sorry, Counselor.
Sorry,
go ahead.
a question to Jen. Do we have to schedule the meeting with the CVS group that we sent the letter to?
The letter was sent, I haven't heard back.
Yeah,
For the
so
24th.
we don't, should we set up the meeting, schedule the meeting prior to the meeting, and if they don't show, they don't show, but there is a lot of, and thanks to this group for supporting me, that it has been work being done and some good improvements going on there, but they're still not out of the woods as far as I'm concerned. What do we do, point of questioning, what do we do if they do show up? How do we fit them into the meeting, if they, to come before us, because we sent the letter out?
It would need to be an
Does it have to be
agenda item.
advertised? Or
No.
can they- No, okay. Then if they come, I'll allow it if it doesn't need to be advertised. We've
Is that
already
how we-
passed the go right ahead, Madam Clerk.
If you don't mind. Thank
Yep,
you.
go right ahead.
Clerk of Committees Jen Manning sent a request and also said, could you please get back to us on or before next Tuesday so that we can get it on the agenda?
Sure, so if they don't get to us before then, we'll move it on to the next meeting.
That's what we have
And
done
we'll
in the
notify
past,
them
yes.
thanks, I'm sorry, I just,
That's okay.
just popped in my head.
Important.
So, thank you. And I want to thank this group, again, this is twice now in my ward that, this group helped me move the rock on a few bad neighbors. So, thank you, folks. And happy Easter to everybody, too. Thank you.
You bet. So we're not going to be convening for another 3 weeks on Monday, April 24th. If you get us to the Wednesday before the meeting, we have 2.5 weeks to put it on the agenda for that meeting. And if you miss it, you have a back-to-back meeting on May 1st. So those are our next 2 meetings. With that, that is it for our items. Can someone entertain a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn made by Counselor Kane. Do I have a second? Seconded by Counselor Andronico. All those in favor say aye. Aye. It is now 7:45 PM. The City Council is now adjourned.